Good afternoon and welcome to this very special Bible study session here at First Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Erica Washington and I am a proud member of FMBC. And today we are basically kicking off the official Pastor and People second annual pastoral anniversary of Reverend Dr. Don Darius Butler. And so for our Bible study session today, we're going to get to know a little bit more about him, about you, Pastor Butler. Good afternoon, and how are you?
I'm great, Erica. Thank you. Great.
We are excited about this, and so we're just going to dig deep a little bit, learn a little bit more about you, and especially for our members here at FMBC and for all of our guests and friends out there in our virtual land. And we thank you all for watching this afternoon. So, as most people know, you are a native of New Providence in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Yes.
So what does that really mean? Is that a small section of the Bahamas or what?
Yes. So New Providence is the capital city, the capital island. It's not one of the larger of the islands, but it is the most densely populated of the islands. So anybody from New Providence is considered a city boy, a city girl, as opposed to being from one of the outer islands, which we would call family islands.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to get to the Bahamas one of these days.
Yes,
and
please.
visit these different islands. I just want the sunshine and the beach.
You'll get it.
Okay, we'll
You'll
do
get
that.
it.
Good. A stranger in a strange land, isn't that what, a little bit what happened?
When you go there, the people are warm, they're friendly, they're inviting, so you won't be a stranger for long.
Now, what I find interesting in studying a little bit about you is that you grew up in the Pentecostal tradition, okay? And you became saved in the Baptist tradition. So with those different entities of the beginning of your faith walk, how old were you and how sure were you that you were called to preach?
So my earliest recollections about religious life took place in the Pentecostal tradition, and it was shaped significantly by church laymen and women who really passed on the faith to us. Somehow my journey got me back to the family church, a Baptist congregation, the Mission Baptist Church, where my maternal roots were really deeply planted. And about 11 years old or so, I made my profession of faith and surrendered my life to the Lord. So over the course of those years, it wasn't that I was trying to discern a call to ministry. Actually, and you may have heard me say this, I wanted to be prime minister, right? That was my goal, right? I wanted to be prime minister by the time I was 40. And I guess I still have another year before that's, to see if that happens. But as I grew in the Mission Church, Sunday evening worship services were particularly special. My pastor, Ari Cooper, often called me to give exhortations to the congregation, and I was a teenager. I looked at it as a part of public speaking, not necessarily a vocational kind of direction. And about 16 years old, I remember July of 1998. July of 1998 was a decisive moment where I knew that my life would go in this direction. And so upon graduating high school in 2000, I took a gap year, and a part of that year, I tried to test the vocation, because the sense of calling was a serious one, right? A sobering one. And you didn't want to just go into it because folks thought it's a good thing to do. You had to be sure, one, God is calling you to it. And so I worked half that year. as a lay associate in the congregation, and then the other half in banking. And of course, I abhorred banking, so I knew banking was not the one. And 20 years ago, made my journey to American Baptist College.
Okay, so you're 16 when
I was
all of this is
16
happening?
In 1998, yes, 16.
So what happened with, I mean, most 16-year-olds are like, Mom, Dad, I need to go get a job because I want to maybe get a car because I have my driver's license. I need to get a tux because the prom's coming up, or I might need braces, or, yo, man, how can I get, that young lady's attention? 16-year-old teenage type things that go on. You're talking about preaching God's word.
Yeah, it just seemed organic. It was just natural to me. At that point, I was involved heavily in a significant number of youth organizations, namely the Boys Brigade, then the Royal Bahamas Police Cadet Corps program as a junior and then a senior in high school, the Governor General's Youth Award program. So I was engaged and was beginning a kind of public profile, right? But it did not negate all of the growth of adolescence and all of that. I was still a fun-loving 16-year-old, that kind of thing. But it was something that over the course of about 2 or 3 years, because I remember asking God very, very pointedly, look, is this for me? Like in several occasions. And on one occasion in particular, we were as a youth group, we were in a pool outing, and I was having a moment of alone time with God. Everyone was having fun, and I was really wrestling and struggling with that. And God made it clear. Yeah.
Interesting. So this is still Bible study, I want everybody to know. So we're going to get into the pulpit now. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 15 and 16 says, "Study and do your best to present yourself to God approved, a workman tested by trial, who has no reason to be ashamed, accurately handling and skillfully teaching the word of truth." What was preaching that first sermon like?
So, now my very first sermon, I can't remember, but my trial sermon. So in our tradition, you had to really give evidence of the call, and you would be examined and monitored over a period of time that discerned your stewardship, your discipline, your discipleship. And so my foray into the preaching guild really took place in high school. I was the leader of an organization that we called the Student Christian Movement, and it became a national program and swept across high schools in the Bahamas, and I was leader of the organization in my high school. And every Wednesday at noon, at the lunchtime, we would gather. It was an opportunity to strengthen young Christians, teenage Christians in the faith. And that was my experience, right? Sharing with my sisters and brothers, teenagers, fellow teenagers, just my convictions of the heart, and never again thinking that it was going to be in a formal sense. But in July 2002, after my first year at American Baptist College, then I went into the trial sermon, right? So by then I had a year of theological education under my belt, and sometimes a little bit of knowledge is a pretty dangerous thing.
Yes.
And you think that you know much, but learning more will teach you how much you do not know. And I recall, perhaps, yes, the first Sunday, July 2002, my trial sermon from a Genesis text, and receiving my certificate of licensure then. And I just, from there, it just took off.
It reminds me of when you're saying that you were off with your friends when Joseph and Mary couldn't find Jesus, and where was he? In the temple with what y'all kind of call the old heads,
Yeah.
talking with them, and you were off doing your own thing, whereas you could have been, somewhere hanging out
Yes.
with
So
other students.
I got in trouble a lot of times as a teenager because my mother didn't buy my story. I was hanging out at church, right? For that very reason. Like I got, I recall we were doing debate prep because I was on the debating team, and we were coming up for a major competition, right? And I was literally at school until midnight, right? They were prepping us, and so I got home and like, no, you weren't at school till
Couldn't have
midnight.
been.
And but that's what I did.
So now it's time to pack and move. Okay, time to pack and move. Hebrews chapter 11:16 says, "But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them." So God obviously prepared Nashville for you. And as a teenager, you moved from the Bahamas to Nashville, Tennessee for college. Was it scary? Was it exciting? Was it a culture shock? What was it for you?
It was every bit of it. In the late 80s, we lived in Massachusetts for about 2 years. So I began first grade there. About 89, we moved back to the Bahamas, and until 2001, my formal education was received there. So to move now on my own was a bit daunting, but the consolation, the saving grace was that I was kind of being delivered into the hands of a people who would welcome me there and would look out for me, but also give me the space and the freedom to mature and develop, that kind of thing. Nashville 20 years ago is not the it city it is today. It was very much a honky-tonk town, but for someone who grew up on an island, 21 by 7 square miles, and about 100,000 people, to go to a city like that, it certainly was an experience. I recall for almost the first academic year, people did not call me by my name. They called me Bahamas. And it was aggravating. It was infuriating. I'm like, I have a name. That's where I'm from. That's not my name.
But that's the HBCU experience.
Yes.
I'm California.
Yes.
I never heard Erica. It was always California.
Yes. So it was a good experience of coming of age, right? Of coming of age, and just exploring ideas and thoughts, and it was a good time.
So it's a different time now for you when it comes to reading, writing, and arithmetic, and you had to add the Bible. Proverbs chapter 4:13 says, "Take hold of my instructions, do not let them go, guard them, for they are the key to life." So a lot of people don't realize that American Baptist College is an HBCU. Now, did you know about HBCUs, and how did you come to choose American Baptist Theological Seminary, ABT, or American Baptist College, ABC as people called it?
Yeah. There were kind of two options for me. If I were going into a secular vocation, it would have been Morehouse College. The legacy of Martin King was significant for me in my own consciousness as a teenager. But once I had tested my vocation and discerned that it was the ministry, it was a tradition of Bahamian Baptist clergymen to go to American Baptist College. My pastor's late father, R.E. Cooper Sr., I've called his name several times in the course of my being here. was one of the first four Bahamian graduates of the college in 1939. Ari Cooper, A.S. Colebrook, H.W. Brown, E.C. Grant, those were pioneering men. And so the decades that followed saw more Bahamian clergy go to the college. And Ari Cooper in particular, H.W. Brown, and others were on the vanguard of majority rule in the Bahamas, 1967. So majority rule was when the majority of people, colored people, got the right of government, right, of self-governance, and by the ballot were able to defeat the white oligarchy that had essentially kept control over the nation. And from 67 to about 73, they were the ministers on the front lines doing the work toward Bahamian independence. So as I am growing up and I'm paying attention to ministers and those with public profiles, I am noting something similar among them. They had gone the way of American Baptist College. And so that is essentially what I did to continue a tradition.
I like that. I love that lineage
Yeah.
that happened for you. So there's always playtime, though, in college, okay? So Zechariah 8:5 says, "And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the streets." So all work and no play makes Bahamas a dull boy. So what kind of committees and organizations and groups were you a part of while you were in college at ABT?
That was a time of real hard work, actually, because for several years, like I worked a third shift job as well, and I was a night auditor. Go figure, yeah.
No parties?
Well,
Come on.
Once I pledged fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, we had some parties, but I can't speak of that publicly, No, we had good time of social engagement, of interacting one with the other,
Stepping,
yeah.
community service.
Yeah.
So you had some good times.
I did. Nashville was a place where I came alive. And so by the time I went across the river to Vanderbilt, it was just a great time.
See, that's what I want to hear. And so, and as you talk about Nashville and some of the more serious things, it leads me, of course, to the civil rights movement. 1 Peter chapter 2:23 gives us a much needed reminder even for today, especially today. When he was abused, he did not return abuse. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but he entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. So you know how important civic engagement is to me, and you went to a college in a city that was just one of the hotbeds of the civil rights movement, and I'd like to think that you had opportunities to rub shoulders with some of the greats there at that time, but you're still a teenager. So what kind of impact did Nashville have on you in knowing about the civil rights history of Nashville while you were a student?
So before going to American Baptist College, I did not know its significance in that movement, but knew its alumni presence across the pond in the Bahamas, their work. And it deepened my appreciation for the institution, because not only were they doing the work in the city of Nashville, in the American South, but they were doing the work wherever they went. And so over the years, even as I have visited the W.W. Brown Memorial Station in Cliptown, in Soweto in South Africa, I find ABC alumni doing the work there as well, right? Just being advocates. And I recall one semester we welcomed, yes, C.T. Vivian and John Lewis, and I was assigned to their chauffeur detail, while they were there. And late that evening, after the worship service had concluded, they wanted to see their old apartment. And we went to their old apartment. It had been refurbished, and it had occupants in the apartment, and there C.T. Vivian is just with this boyish laughter, right? Just remembering his days on the Hill, and then we ended up at the Denny's on Brick Church Pike late into the night as John Lewis and C.T. Vivian are sitting reminiscing about the movement, calling the names of the icons who were still living at that time and some who had dropped their robe of flesh, and just to be in that moment, to glean, to listen, to hear, really left this indelible impression upon me that here on the banks of the Cumberland River, this small school would give lieutenants to the movement, right? And then, in the last, 7, 8 years, as the movie Selma came out, to see them featured prominently was really a deep sense of pride.
Yeah, you got to rub those shoulders. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that, and that makes me think of black and white transitions. Joshua chapter 1, verse 9 has encouraging words of, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." So after graduation from ABT, you went on to attend two prominent, predominantly white institutions, or PWIs as they are now called these days, Vanderbilt University and Duke University. What were those transitions like for you, coming from an HBCU to a PWI?
Interestingly enough, the Vanderbilt experience was an incredible one. Because I had the foundation laid for me that I did not face the kind of crisis of faith that some of my colleagues were facing. Because by that time, I was engaging the substance of the material, for 4 years, and so it just became second nature. And so that language was good. We had great time at Vanderbilt. I led the Black Seminarians for 2 years. And in my senior year, we challenged the administration to appoint a woman of color, a black woman, to the faculty, because it had not had representation of a black woman to the faculty. We had a visiting professor with whom I had taken several courses, womanist theology and liberation theology, those kinds of courses, but not someone who had permanent appointment. And so I happened to be on the search committee as one of the student representatives. And institutions have their politics, right?
Oh, yes.
And PWIs are the leaders of that kind of political wrangling. And they wanted to declare that the search had failed. But we weren't having that. So as leader of the Black Seminarians, we waged a campaign against our faculty and administration. And we called them to account on the commitment statements that they made, right? And one of the commitment statements, which is the commitment statements in total really led me to Vanderbilt Divinity School. But one in particular says, we are committed to combating the idolatry of racism. We're committed to combating the idolatry of racism. And we were saying, this is your creed. This is the commitment that you are making as you are forming us, and you are forming us in the tradition of the Latin phrase Schola Prophetorum, the school of the prophets. And if you are shaping us in the tradition of the school of the prophets, then you must be able to stand the same critique that the prophets must make, right? Because, the history of our divinity school during the civil rights movement, the university expelled James Lawson, right, who was teaching students from American Baptist College the nonviolent philosophy, and he was studying there. And the divinity school faculty resigned in protest to James Lawson's expulsion, right? And so that sense of activism was deeply rooted in the identity of the school, and we just rose up. And there was a point, honestly, when I did not know if I was going to graduate, because, and I'm not exaggerating this, I was kind of confronted by one of the faculty members who, on the slide, was threatening me. You don't want to do this, because I was in this professor's class that very semester, right? And it was a foundational course, which means I had to take it. It was not a pass-fail class, right? But we charted a course that we believed belonged to the future of the school and those who would succeed us. And so at the end of it, we all graduated, and the following semester, they had a woman of color who is still there now, tenured at the divinity school.
God always has the final say.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Always has the last say, and I do hear the foundation from American Baptist College that carried over to Vanderbilt in more ways than one, and not just for you. And I'm glad that you were able to have the opportunity to play a role in that, and I think that is wonderful. And do want to welcome our viewers. If you're just now tuning in, this is First Missionary Baptist Church and a very special study session here. I'm Erica Washington talking with our pastor, Reverend Dr. Don Darius Butler, and it's kind of kicking off the Pastor and People celebration for his second annual pastoral anniversary, which is coming up this weekend and on Sunday. So in the few minutes that we have left here, leadership. Let's get into leadership a little bit. It's essential to any endeavor. Psalm 32:8 says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. So some leadership roles that you have under your belt include chair of the ABT Board of Trustees, the Milwaukee Associates in Ministry, MLK College of Pastoral Leadership at Morehouse College, an HBCU, and now pastor of First Missionary Baptist Church. Now, there's one role in 2008 that turned into a partnership role when you and Lakeisha got married. So what I want to know is, how do you juggle your pastor's duties, her attorney duties? You have kids, duties of 2 kiddos, and household duties and whatever. How do you juggle all of that? That's a different kind of leadership there.
Well, like anyone else, right? That there are the negotiations of responsibility of when to be where, and for me that helps me determine, okay, what I need to set aside in order to be present. I'm committed to being a present father for my children, for Dahlia and for DJ, and so that they would grow up, with some fond memories of their childhood, that it's not subsumed by the work of the ministry. And so, but there are times when I've got to be more guarded about that, so that the professional time of commitments don't really take their time, because I don't think either of them really care that I am Dr. Anybody. they like that. That's not their thing. They want my presence and my attention and that kind of thing, and so I have to be attentive to that. Yeah.
Your dad, your husband, you have the job at the job, leave the job at the job.
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
best as you can.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
when you get home, your
Yes.
job at the job, that's
Yes.
cool. So it takes two to make a thing go right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So 1 Timothy 5:17 instructs like this: "Let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor." Second anniversary, double. I'm playing here now. "Especially they who labor in the word and doctrine." So we are embarking on your 2-year anniversary here at FMBC. Pastor and People has been one of your themes. Talk a bit about pastor and the youth of FMBC.
So, I'm a kid at heart, really, and I realized how much I was benefited by the nurture and the care and the mentorship of seniors when I was young, and their ability to see in me what I had not yet come to see, and to claim that for me until I was able to claim it for myself, continue to mark me in significant ways. And so being able to engage and interact with young people, is just pure delight. They often think I'm silly, and I'm trying to learn their lingo and their language, and to not grow old so quickly, right? But to really offer them the potential to discern even what I was able to discern at my age. And so I'm always open to that.
You lead by example to the young people. Pastor and our teenagers.
Yeah. So, my seniors, they have a special place in my heart, actually. Because I love sitting and listening. I love hearing the stories of their lives, of not only the successes, but of the struggles, and how they have summoned strength and the dignity to face those struggles and to make new landings on the journey, and to hear what they would say to my generation, right? So I think of what Howard Thurman would have said to a group of college students at a university in Florida: never speak of the sunset when you've only seen the sunrise, right? And it's a way of saying this enterprise has been going on a long time, and the wisdom of the elders will aid us, will guide us along the way. And so I always enjoy doing that. I had an opportunity to sit with someone 92 years old yesterday, and to hear the verdict come in, and to have the recollections of her, who remembers World War II and all these activities of the movement and what was happening in Selma in the 60s, and remembering a safe house that their family kept for those involved in the movement, that at one point Martin King sought refuge in this place at a time thick with agitation. And so, I mean, there is no greater lesson to learn, right, than to have the living document present to share that. You can't pay for that.
Nope. Pastor and congregation.
Tom Long, in The Witness of Preaching, one of the fundamental texts that have shaped my sense of the pastoral identity within the context of preaching, is that the preacher comes out of the congregation to lead the witness of the people. And And that really means that what affects the people affects the preacher pastor. Their burdens is the pastor's, and vice versa, right? It's a sense of mutuality, of common sharing. It's like what the prophet Ezekiel says, I've sat where they sit, right? That their brokenness of heart is not a distant reality, that we share in with it together. And that is important, because any leader who is going somewhere without a people following is simply going for a walk.
And are you guiding them to be able to follow?
Yeah, that it's about empowering, right? The New Testament record is that the pastor does not do the work for the people. The pastor equips the saints for the doing of ministry. That in ministries of preaching and teaching and in vision casting and pastoral care, that we are nurturing that consciousness among the disciple members, so that they might walk into that sense of purpose and calling that God has for them.
Walk in the light. So let's wrap up a little bit with a rapid fire round. And you have to say one word that comes to mind when I say these pairs, because we're still in twos, right? Okay. Paul and Silas.
What comes to mind?
One word that comes to your mind? Paul and Silas.
Partnership.
Gospels and hymns.
Worship.
Pastor Emeritus Dr. Julius R. Scruggs and Dr. Howard Thurman.
Thinkers.
Blue and white and pink and green.
Great.
You should add number one. Okay. Old Testament and New Testament.
Bible.
George Floyd and Sandra Bland.
Martyrs.
Masks and COVID vaccines.
Essential.
Catfish and Caribbean food.
Yummy.
And in parentheses, hungry. Okay. Barack Obama and Kamala Harris.
Excellence.
Dahlia Marie and DJ.
Deep abiding affection. I know it's more than one word.
That's allowed. That's okay. That's allowed. Pastor and people.
It's what God ordains.
So I say keep moving forward. 2 Timothy 4:2 says, preach the word, be ready to serve God in good times and bad. Correct people's mistakes, warn them, encourage them with words of hope. Be very patient as you do these things. Teach them carefully.
Yeah, recently, Eric, I was talking with someone and had to say to the person, be careful who we follow in popular culture, right? Because the person was sharing some advice that that this person in social media was giving, and I said, you might, yeah. The concept of pastor is shepherd, one who is among the flock of God, watching, tending, observing, and guiding, right? And that requires knowing the people of God. And for me, particularly in the last year, it's been a great strain for me, right? To have the pandemic kind of almost short circuit the real time, to be up close and personal with the members, to know more names and stories and the like. It's been a strain, but there have been places through this year where the sun has peeked through clouds and have given a sense of assurance and confirmation that God is still doing good work with us. And so that for me is important, that God still gives pastors and God still sends us to good places for leading people and to be blessed and to be to fall in love with the people, right? You know, and that's what's happening here.
I think is one thing Pastor Scruggs has always taught is to make wise decisions. And I think that's one of the first things that will help you, and of course by God's guidance and his leadership, then you know which steps to take, which way to turn, where to go, who to talk with, who to have in your circle.
Yeah.
I think all of those things, those entities, that's what helps you to lead and to follow, and for the congregation to lead and to follow as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
No
Yes.
doubt. So, well, I appreciate this time talking with you, and hopefully our viewers and our FMBC family that have been watching have learned a little bit more about our pastor, and we're excited about your second pastoral anniversary coming up. And there was a TV show back in the day, Love Connection. Whenever they went to a commercial, he always say, "We'll see you in 2 and 2." So we've got a lot of twos going up, coming up. So we'll see you in 2 and 2 on Sunday. And any words you want to tell us about Sunday, what's happening on Sunday?
Sunday is worship on the lawn. I hope someone has checked the weather forecast that it's going to be sunny, right? So let the folks come on out. You know, that is the gift to me, right? To be able to see the people. Because I draw energy from that kind of engagement. So to see the kiddos and the youth and young adults on Friday, and then on Sunday to have worship, a good friend and college mate of mine, George Parks, will be here to share the gospel, and we're just going to praise God.
All right, we'll be physically distanced, wear your mask, and come out for a good pastoral anniversary message from up above. I'm Erica Washington for Pastor Dr. Don Darius Butler. Thank you so much for tuning into this very special Bible session here on fmbc.org, on Facebook, YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in.